Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friends Talk Money. I'm Pam Kruger, co-host of Money Track on public television and founder of wealthramp.com.
I'm Richard Eisenberg, a personal finance writer and editor, and formerly the editor of the Money and Work channels for the PBS site for people over 50, nextavenue.org.
And I'm Terry Savage, nationally syndicated personal finance columnist and the author of The Savage Truth on Money.
We're three friends who like to talk money and all the issues that come with it.
On this podcast, we're trying to help you understand your personal finances
to get you and your retirement on the right path for true financial peace of mind.
Hi, everybody. We have really big news today. Our own Terry Savage is out with a new book. She co-authored it with Larry Kotlikoff, who is the well-known economist and guru of Social Security, you probably know. The book is called Social Security Horror Stories, Protect Yourself from the System and Avoid Clawbacks. And Terry and Larry are going to tell us all about it and why you should know about it. Now, you've probably seen Terry and Larry on 60 Minutes talking about this. And it's not about the future solvency of Social Security, though that's a big issue. But this is about Social Security making really big mistakes in the way they calculate benefits, and then they bully seniors and disabled people, clawing back money and just stopping their monthly benefit checks. So we're going to have Larry and Terry explain what it's all about. So maybe we can just start by Larry. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome back, I should say. And tell us, how did you and Terry come together to make this book?
Well, it goes back to my other book, Money Magic, that came out. And Terry, who I did not know, but I knew of, interviewed me, and then she started, sending me off some questions by email about Social Security, and some were horror stories. And she said, "What's going on here?" And I said, "Well, I've been writing about this for a decade. These are just horrific. And why don't we, why don't you ask all your readers through your syndicated column to send in their horror stories, and let's collect them and put together a book." And then Terry, because she's connected with CBS, she does a CBS local TV show in Chicago, knows folks at CBS, and 60 Minutes is a CBS show. So they got in touch with the producers of CBS 60 Minutes, and then they got in touch with us, and then Anderson Cooper decided to go ahead and do a segment on Social Security horror stories.
Bravo, Terry.
This has just been the past few months. It's been insane. Because thanks, Larry, a lot. Because I'll tell you how it really started. I got an email from a reader, a woman that I named Ruth. I gave her a pseudonym because I figured I didn't want to expose her. I didn't know where she lived, but I named her Ruth. Subsequently, the local CBS station will put a bunch of links, by the way, at all this in the show notes. We'll put the link to 60 Minutes. We'll put the link to the local CBS piece that I just taped last week with Ruth, whose real name is Diane. And by the way, we'll put in the link to buy the book. Put a picture of the book up, please, Louis, our producer. It's called Social Security Horror Stories. It's not just to tell stories, it's to help you so it doesn't happen to you, and a bunch of other things. We'll get to that. But it started with this, I reprinted it in full in the book. It started with this horror story. I'm a widow. I'm 73 years old. I just had a triple heart bypass. My husband died 2 years ago. And out of the blue, I got a letter from Social Security. They want $80,786, something like that. And I have 30 days to pay. And my heart's palpitating, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose my house. So I naively thought, oh, I'm Terry Savage. I could fix this. Got to be a mistake, right? Got to be a mistake. Started calling Social Security, and nobody would call me back. I mean, I describe it. I went to the local Social Security, the Midwest. Finally, I contacted in Washington. I got put through, and I said, "Look, what's the story on this? I'm running this column this week." "Well, we'll get back to you." They didn't, so I ran the column. And then I got a call back from Social Security. "Well, sometimes we make mistakes in overpayments, and it's our duty." I said, "Yeah, but this is a widow. She doesn't have any money." "Well, that's just she can appeal, and maybe she'll get a waiver." And I said, "Well, how big is this problem?" "Oh, we can't disclose that."
And it's their mistake, Terry. It's their mistake.
No, it's their mistake. All of these, it's their mistake. By the way, they would not go on 60 Minutes to comment in that show. You'll see that. But they said, well, you'll have to look in the trustees report. Well, the good thing I know how to read a balance sheet, you know? And all of a sudden I'm finding it's $21.6 billion of quote receivables, money due back in overpayments that they had made, $21 billion. We found out 1 million people a year are receiving these clawback letters. But the worst of it is you can't get through to Social Security. They don't answer the phones. They don't have the records. You'll have to go to another office. The office is closed. We'll call you back. They never do. They aren't giving the waivers. Local, Larry, I'll tell you, local level people are just shutting them down. They have a duty of good conscience and equity. If they determined the benefit that people relied on that to retire and so forth, they have every way in the book to waive those clawbacks, but they're not doing it. They are big bullies. And you know what their real power is? They just say, and that's what happened to Ruth. It's a year or 2 years later now. She has not received a Social Security check. Not only that, when you don't get your Social Security check, they aren't deducting your Medicare payment. So we have a lot of people that now not only don't get Social Security, but have to scrounge up to pay Medicare Part B. Social Security, I'll leave it with this, is a giant mess, and they are bullies. I don't mind being quoted on that because our book gives plenty of evidence.
Yeah, I think we should say that we're not right wing or left wing.
Yeah.
We're here to help Social Security fix itself, get Congress to actually act because Social Security will never fix this on its own. And they will claim that unless you have documentation that it was their mistake, they'll claim it was your mistake. But even if they accept that it's their mistake, the only reason they have for waiving it in general is to say it was our mistake, but you also have to be indigent. You have to be super poor, and then we will consider waiving it. There's 10,000 claim representatives. Each of these petty bureaucrats has the power to waive or not waive in particular cases. And we're talking about over 1 million clawbacks every year. So we're talking about, at this point in time, we're probably talking about 5 million people, 5 million Americans who are dealing with clawback issues with Social Security, and people like Ruth not getting a check and not being able to either afford medicine or
keep her house, possibly. Richard, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we'll get to the appeals part of this soon, but before we get to that, Larry, just explain how this happens. Why does Social Security make so many of these mistakes? Is it that the system's complicated? Do they not get the right information? Why is this happening?
Well, the system is enormously complicated. 12 benefits, 2,728 rules in the handbook of Social Security about the 12 benefits, and then hundreds of thousands of rules in the program operating manual system about the 2,728 handbook rules about the 12 benefits. So you could not have a more complicated system. The agents don't know really the details of what to tell people, so they tell them the wrong thing. But let me give you just one example. If you're working for non-covered employment, and I don't want to suggest that these clawbacks are segregated or restricted just to one type of people, or one type of worker, but I'll just give you an example. You're a school teacher for the state of Illinois. You were in non-covered employment, meaning Social Security taxes weren't taken out. You got a pension. You go into Social Security, let's say a month or two before you start collecting your retirement benefit, and say, look, I've got this pension. I know it affects how big my check is. Please take it into account. The agent says, fine, you're all set. And then you get a check in the mail, and they haven't taken into account your non-covered pension, which is by law supposed to lower your benefit through what's called the windfall elimination provision.
Excuse me, this assumes that maybe this person worked in corporate America for 15, 20, 25 years and then became a teacher. So would have paid into Social Security with some money earlier and would be due a benefit.
Right.
This,
Not much, but not as large a benefit as if he were not
Right, it
getting.
would've been reduced, yeah.
yeah,
Now he's getting the pension, and Social Security said they took it into account, and they didn't, and then they start sending him this check that he thinks is the right amount, and for decades he's being overpaid, and then he gets a bill in the mailbox, a clawback letter, and it says you owe us $63,000. I've seen clawbacks for $301,000. I've seen clawbacks for over $100,000. I've seen clawbacks for $175. I've seen clawbacks that they are going after somebody 45 years after they think they overpaid him $175 for a benefit that he got when he was a high school student. I've seen them sue 5-year-olds for orphans.
explain this. Wait, how about this? You have a disabled couple. They get benefits, disability benefits, legitimately. We're not talking about cheating Social Security. They get legitimate disability benefits and a benefit for the minor child. The child's 4, 5, 6. The parent uses the money for food and clothing and whatever, clothes for the kids. Now we have a young man who graduates college and is in the workforce and gets a clawback letter. Wait a minute, when you were 5, we shouldn't have been paying your mother that disability benefit for you. The mother's dead now, okay? These are the most outrageous things they've dug up. Larry, go on, I can see you see things to talk about.
Yeah, and then I have a question after.
All right, but listen,
I'm just saying it's really affecting, if we're talking about over 1 million people a year, it's affecting all of us. I mean, I got an email just the other day of an 87-year-old lady. Her daughter emailed me. She's taking care of her, and suddenly she's got this massive clawback. It's in the $50,000 range, and the lady has no other sources of income. The daughter now is on the line. So it's not just really a clawback of the mother, it's the clawback of the daughter because she's financially responsible. So this is really ubiquitous. This is every American is living or should be living in terror because of the system, which is
happen to anybody.
Larry,
Terry, first of all, I just want to thank you for taking your time to write this book and make this happen and do the interview on 60 Minutes and bringing it, shining a national spotlight, because what we're talking about is mistakes. And so the Social Security Administration can say, look, we're going to make mistakes. You cannot blame this on being understaffed necessarily, because I say this because it sounds like from everything I've seen and read of everything you guys have written, that when the mistake is in your favor, okay, and they want that money back, they're fast, they're on it. But if they actually do owe you money and the mistake is the other way around, they're never going to fix it.
Time out. There's only, let me make a point, Larry, just bear with me. I'm doing a commercial for you. Now, Pam, nobody goes to Social Security at any point in their lives saying, I think you should be giving me $2,182. Everybody goes to Social Security believing they deserve a check. They're retired, they're disabled, whether they're a spousal benefit, whatever it might be. And they say, what are you going to give me? That is the worst question you can ever ask Social Security, because the odds of them getting that correct, as we are showing you, are infinitesimal.
Wow.
Now, for a long time, Larry, long time ago, Larry will explain how he's used incredible technology to create a website called MaximizeMySocialSecurity.com. It's a simple software. It includes everything, even the stuff that Social Security forgets to ask for. Ordinary people can do it. And by the way, it costs $39. And I want you to know, I'm going to say this ahead of time, Larry, he's never taken a penny out of the company. All that money goes back into working on the software. No matter what your situation is, I'll let you explain in a minute, Larry, but if you went to them and knew, I want Larry to just deed that over to Social Security and let them throw out their stuff. But if you went to MaximizeMySocialSecurity.com, you would know what your benefits should be, and you wouldn't be blindly asking them. But the problem is we don't know if they are underpaying you, but they know when they're overpaying us, and they have all the power. Larry, did I do a good enough job of explaining Maximize My Social Security.
It's
All
just
right.
a simple program. Tens of thousands of people have used it. It's the most accurate Social Security calculator in the world, and it's far more accurate than Social Security's, which for reasons we explain in our new book, Social Security Horror Stories, protect yourself from the system and avoid clawbacks. So it's available on Amazon, by the way. And it explains all these horror stories, but also half the book is about Social Security scams that you could fall afoul of unless you really understand. But anyway, if you run the software, if you haven't yet collected, it will say to the dollar what you should collect, taking into account all the factors. And so when you start collecting your check, well, you won't be overpaid. You'll know if you're being overpaid, and you can immediately correct it with Social Security. If you are already collecting, you can go to the software and enter your information. It will say what you should be collecting this month to the dollar, so that you can see if you're now being overpaid, overpaid, but also you might be being underpaid.
That's my point. Yeah.
So either way, this software is very valuable for everybody. I would say everybody who's getting Social Security or going to get Social Security should run it.
Let me go back to the
Like,
clawbacks for a
maximize
second.
my socialsecurity.com, because I could hear everybody going, what was it? Maximize my socialsecurity.com. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're trying to save you from these horror stories.
Richard?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the clawbacks for a second, and I want to play devil's advocate for a second for Larry and Terry. So let's say it turns out that Social Security made a mistake, and I've been getting a bigger benefit than I really should have gotten. And it was their error, but they figured it out. And I've been getting this money that I really did not deserve to get. And let's make it simple. So let's say, it turns out that I got $500 more than I should have been getting. And they just found this out. So why shouldn't I have to pay that money back? It sounds to me like you're saying basically, they screwed up. It's your money. Too bad to them. You should keep it all. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not, it might be $500, but it's $500 a month. And then it's going on for decades. And you're relying on this, you've maybe given the money to your granddaughter, or maybe you've used it for your cat's
Yeah,
veterinary.
you believed them. In other words, you believed them when they told you this was the amount,
Yeah,
and
I
then you
understand.
planned your budget around that.
Maybe
Right.
you took an extra, you thought you could afford, you saved it up, you took a trip to Greece, the first time in your life, and you planned, and then all of a sudden you're now living basically lots and lots of Americans are either fully or mostly dependent on that Social Security check. And now you get this enormous bill in the mail because it took them 15 years to figure out that they think they over. And by the way, there's no guarantee that the mistake they made to begin with, that they say that they did, is actually a mistake, because they don't, in other words, they send you these demand letters saying, we overpaid you, but they don't provide any evidence or even any explanation for the overpayment. So you're now in a Kafka world of having to try and figure out where this is coming from and whether it's correct. But anyway, after, we should not be taking people that have been, relying on this money and acted in good faith and tried to give Social Security the information they wanted, and then hitting them up. At some point there should be a statute of limitations, like 18 months. If Social Security goes beyond 18 months and hasn't fixed its mistake, they should waive these callbacks. And they do have the power to do this. Let me be clear about one thing that comes up in the 60 Minutes show, which is that we identified through Terry's website, we got a letter from, it's Elizabeth, what's her name, last name again?
Becky Sword. Listen to this. Watch this. One of our early letters. It was when H1 moved me to tears. So we gave this to 60 Minutes. Go ahead. They used her.
So Becky and her husband are living basically off of Social Security, and they're older retired people, nice middle-class couple. and they get, whether they're nice, that would be nice if they're lower income, they're nice people, okay? They could be rich or poor, it doesn't matter. They're not nice because they're middle class. So, but they are middle class. And they got this bill for, how much was it? It was in
It
the
was 50,000 plus.
58,000, some big number. And they're horror struck, and they're being interviewed by Anderson Cooper on the show. And then 60 Minutes turned around after that interview and went back to Social Security. And don't you know, within about a week or two, Social Security decides to waive their clawback. So what this is telling us is that you can get your this fiscal financial abuse to end if you can get Anderson Cooper to call Social Security for you.
If you can get Terry to call Anderson Cooper to get it.
But wait, he wrote us the most beautiful thank you note saying, "Oh, we can't thank you enough." I said, and I wrote back to her, I said, you were one of these first horror stories. My response, I still have, "Oh, this is truly a horror story." And she said, I'm so relieved. We are both so relieved, but we just feel the pain of so many others who were featured on the show, who didn't get the publicity. Look, you made a good point, Richard. I want to come back because we didn't quite answer that. We'll talk about it. Larry will talk about it expertly, about the great basic lie in Social Security's financing system. We know there are big fiscal problems down the road, but the fact of clawing back people who've been living on these checks and years of benefits, which they didn't falsify their applications. Social Security made mistakes. The agency is never called to account for its mistakes. It doesn't pay. No one gets fired. No heads roll. Management doesn't send out directives. They don't update systems. There are systems. Larry's could do it, could calculate everybody's benefits.
You can't blame all this on the fact that they say that they're the lowest staffing point in 25 years. You can't blame all of it on that.
There's supposed to be AI that's now going to nobody will ever have a job. Please. This is bullying.
Yeah, I mean, if Larry can do
immediate
it,
level,
right?
and
Larry
the reason
can do it with his software. If Larry can create a software himself in his office, you're telling me the Social Security.
There is an appeals process. What's the appeals process though? What if I get one of these letters and I think they're wrong? What can I do?
Let me tell you. First of all, there's a waiver can be granted by the person you're talking to, who won't give you a name and number, who you don't know how to get back to, who never keeps any records. And although they say the conversations are recorded, nobody can ever find them.
And they have
so
the power.
You're talking to Joe or Mary at the Social Security office. And I've talked to a couple of them when you'll see it in the book, and they don't know what the right answer is because I said, Larry, this is what they said. Nope. Okay. They are the ones that can deny immediately, but they don't really want to abuse that power. They just say, well, we'll take it into account. Now they're not supposed to stop your check, but until there's been a hearing, but they do stop your check. And then months later, they come back to you and say, well, your waiver claim was denied. Then you want to appeal. If you appeal, you will not find an attorney. Number one, we have in the book, attorneys say there's nothing in it for us. You can't fight the government. It's not enough money to us, where there's no compensatory damages for us to take your case where it makes it worth our time. But even worse, you're put in front of an administrative law judge who is paid by Social Security. And we have both heard the story that the administrative law judges have been instructed to turn down these things. And Larry has a story that will blow you, the story about the woman.
Let me tell you the biggest clawback story I've heard that I got in my inbox, and talked to the people back and forth, and actually saw the administrative law judge judgment. So this is a lady who became disabled through a work accident. So she's living on disability income. She gets disability from Social Security. And then she just decides, she's never written a book before, to write a child's book. It becomes a bestseller. She starts getting royalties. She calls Social Security, can I still get these disability checks? I'm getting this income. They say, well, it's royalty income. So it doesn't, if it were earned income, we'd have to stop your disability check, but it's royalty income. So for 10 years, she gets like $300,000 of royalty income. of disability benefits. And then she gets a clawback letter for $301,000. And where's this from? Well, apparently she went and spoke at a couple libraries, and they sent her a 1099 for probably the travel expenses to drive, whatever. And then she learns that her royalty income that they assured her was not a problem is going to now be interpreted as earned income, and that she owes all this disability income that she received for the last decade or so, and it's $301,000. So she goes through the appeals process, which takes a couple of years before you show up in front of an administrative law judge who is paid by Social Security, by the way. So I'm reading his judgment, and the judgment says, it was our mistake. So that's one of the two criteria. But then the other criteria for me to be able to waive this is that you're poor, that you're indigent. Well, her financial statement showed she only had disability income. But the judge said, I decline your waiver appeal because I've looked at your cable plan and you have lots of channels, and anyone with lots of channels cannot be poor. So your cable plan is too rich. So therefore I'm denying your waiver and pay back the $301,000 immediately. And then, by the way, they can not only stop your check, but if you're a younger person that they're trying to claw back for benefits that you got when you were 11, they can garnish your wages. They can grab your tax refund. They can sue you for your checking account balances.
Wow. Now you can't make that up. I mean,
No,
that is life stranger than fiction. I have a question for you, Larry. You made me think about, we keep hearing about women more. I mean, is it somehow women disproportionately impacted by these mistakes somehow in the system?
Well,
or just that women live longer? I mean, how does that play
women
out?
are, in the sense that a big component of this group are people that are in non-covered employment, and women are more often to be teachers in non-covered, and the teaching system in the different states are often non-covered jobs, because when Social Security was set up, they couldn't force state governments to include their employees in Social Security. So they, like Massachusetts, has opted not to have their teachers be covered by Social Security. So a couple of things I want to get across that we haven't mentioned yet. Since we're talking about women, Social Security is incredibly sexist. I mean, if you get divorced a day before 10 years, you'll have no rights to your spouse's benefits. You might be staying home with the kids and forgoing your career to help your husband succeed, and then he dumps you for another person, and then he divorces you exactly a day before 10 years. And some men do this because they know how the system works.
It has happened. I've
Nothing.
seen.
So think about that, Pam. Think about why Social Security has a rule that says you have to be married for 10 years. It's to keep the woman from divorcing the husband. Think about why they have a rule that says you will not be able to get a divorce widow's benefit on your ex if you get married before 60. It's because if you get married after 60, you supposedly have lost your looks, and the dead husband will no longer be jealous. These are provisions that we write about in the book that were set up by old white guys in the 50s and 60s that are incredibly sexist. There's about 20
still in place today.
in place. But I want to say one other thing about where all this is coming from, that most people, that's really maybe the underlying part of the underlying reason here for the number of clawbacks, is that Social Security needs particular information to reduce your benefits. Like, it needs to know what your pension is from your non-covered job. And it doesn't have that information independently. It hasn't set up the computer connections with the Massachusetts school system. It hasn't and it doesn't get the 1099 that mass school system sends to the IRS does not send the 1099 to Social Security for reasons that are, I can explain, but I won't get into it. It's too complicated. So Social Security is flying blind, but they don't want to tell you, Richard, the retired school teacher who also worked in the private sector, that they don't know the number X that they need to cut your benefit. And please, Richard, tell us the number X, because they're worried that you, Richard, won't tell them the number X correctly, because you'll know that it will lower your benefit. So we're in this kind of catch-22. They want the public to tell them how much they should reduce their benefit, but they don't want to tell the public that they don't know that they're relying on the public.
Should be.
So,
Yeah.
so they're not revealing this, so the public doesn't realize people like these, folks, like even like disability workers, disabled people who do some work, they need to reveal how much they're earning. And if Social Security says, tell us how much you're earning, they're worried that people won't tell them, and they'll lose money that way. So this is the source of the mess. One of the sources of the mess here, that they are not getting the information they need to get the benefits right. So they just pay people, assuming, ignoring this information, and then it's an overpayment.
Part of this, we talk in the book, if you want to make, and this is certainly not the answer, but I said, Larry, when we wrote this, I said, you wouldn't think anybody would do this. Every month, you should send your pay stub. If you're like a retired teacher, first of all, it's very complicated, because if you have a 403B, they don't care about it until the day you start collecting Social Security. And on that date, they need to know the value of the assets in your account the day you start taking your pension. That's number one.
If you have a non-covered retirement account, that's like a 403B.
Like 403B. Okay. That's number one. Number two, they need to know how much you're earning on your pension. And since they can't keep up with it, and there's all kinds of complexities about when you specifically start, because you might get your full Social Security check for a while until you get your pension, because you wouldn't be reduced because you aren't getting a pension yet. And once you start getting it, if it's in the middle of the year, they shouldn't dock you for the whole year. So maybe what you should do is send a registered mail return receipt requested copy of your pay stub every month, so that for sure they would get it right. Well, that's like sending it into the black hole. Nobody's going
to. That's what Elizabeth Sword, right? Yeah. That's what she did. Because I talked to her on the phone, and she told me, I said, how is it they, realized it was their mistake? Obviously it was their mistake, but, that they acknowledged it was their mistake. Because, well, we sent these pay stubs every month. And in this case, it was a husband who became disabled, and then he was able to go, he felt good enough to go back to work. He goes to Social Security. He says, look, I'm going back to work. Please stop my disability checks. They say, fine, or you've notified us, you've done your thing. And they keep sending the disability checks. So the couple figures that this money is theirs because they've informed Social Security correctly, and that there must be some provision that lets them keep payments for so many years. So they keep the money, and every month they send in the notice and still nothing happens. So it's not that you can notify Social Security and that they would get it right the next minute. You can notify Social Security for 20 years and they will get it wrong for the next 20 years because they are incompetent. So for what they should have done, to tell you the truth, is run our software, maximizemysocialsecurity.com. And it sounds self-promotional, but as Terry said, I have never earned a penny from this company. Okay, we try and keep the prices low and help people. But if they had been running the software, they would have seen that they were being overpaid, and then they could have at least saved up those checks to give them back, as opposed to spend them on things they felt that were necessary. Might have been an addition to their house or an improvement to their house or fix the plumbing or whatever.
Terry, Larry, for me, can I just switch a gear just for a quick second and go to remedies and what has to happen here? I mean, is it going to take an act of Congress?
Going to take an act of Congress.
Do I have to contact the Secretary of Labor, the President of the United States? I mean, thanks to you guys pushing this out on 60 Minutes, this message is heard. And I know the two of you are not going to stop until that message is acknowledged. But what is it going to take?
Let's
So
divide it in half. Wait, let's divide it in half. I'll talk about the stuff they could do just because of this publicity. And then Larry will talk about the legal remedies and the people involved. But let me just say this. Social Security is not amenable to change. And what they could do as a result of this publicity is issue some kind of a statement. They have it's been adjudicated 30 years ago in equity and good conscience. If Social Security made a decision or committed to pay benefits and people relied on these, they have every easily way to waive these clawbacks. Okay. But the fact is that legislation will be required. And I know Larry will explain it, but from a point of view of today, remember when the President's State of the Union, I'm trying to be apolitical here, last winter, when he said, well, we're not, Social Security is not going to be on the table, right? And then all the Republicans had to say, right? Well, I mean, nobody wants to cut Social Security because we're pretty powerful seniors here. So if you raise the flag that says they're doing horrible things, we ought to fix this, which Larry will give you some of the ideas. Congress can't discuss anything, much less Social Security. And in the meantime, nobody's overlooking these abuses that are happening, not about the funding in the future, but to real people today. But Larry, go ahead. What legislation would we like to see?
So Social Security is interpreting the law in its own way. The law says they have to act in equity and good conscience, that they can waive these clawbacks, let's say beyond 18 months, if it goes against equity and good conscience. They're choosing to interpret the law very strictly and say, and believe they can't actually act on that provision in the law because it's too vague. So what we really need is an act of Congress. So my view is the only way this is going to happen is if everybody, frankly, buys our book and buys 3 for their members of Congress and sends them physically to the offices of the members of Congress, so that those offices are just filled to the brim with this book that screams at the top of in the cover, Social Security horror stories, and has a claw coming out of the book, going through a treasury check that, makes clear that they're clawing back a treasury check, that they're destroying your benefit. That's what's going to be required. And this is a big number to us, 21 billion, but compared to the 65.9 trillion unfunded liability of the system, it's peanuts. So nobody in Congress can claim this is, we have to keep abusing millions of people every year financially and leaving everybody else in terror, really, once they understand this, for what's going to show up in their mailbox or their mother's mailbox or their kid's mailbox. They can fix this without it having any real impact on the overall fiscal financial system of the problems of the system, because this is trivial compared to that problem.
Thank you, Richard.
Well, I'll just wrap up and say I want to thank Larry and Terry for being with us for our post-Halloween show, talking about Social Security horror stories. And hope that our conversation is going to help lead to some changes, because clearly there are changes that need to be made. Thanks so much, and best of success with the book.
Thank you. We want to ask all of you to buy the book, not for us, believe me. If you just go to Amazon, Social Security Horror Stories, and our website, socialsecurityhorrorstories.com, send the link or buy a book, send it to your member of Congress. We made it easy on our website. We can find your member's address, or just send them an email with the link, because the more of us that know and care that it's happening to people, everybody was dispersed. Nobody knew it was happening to anyone else until we got this all together. So we have the power, our generation, and that's what Larry and I are all about. We are all about changing the system so people don't get terrorized by Social Security.
And everything that's been mentioned as far as resources is on friendstalkmoney.org in our show notes. But Larry and Terry, I mean, thank you for fighting the fight. You didn't have to do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Friends Talk Money is funded in part by a grant from the Investor Protection Trust. The IPT is a nonprofit organization devoted to investor education. Since 1993, the IPT has worked with the states to provide the independent, objective investor education needed by all Americans to make informed investment decisions. Visit investorprotection.org. We also receive support from the North American Securities Administrators Association, known as NASA. It's the oldest international investor protection organization. NASA's members include state and provincial securities regulators from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico who serve on the front lines of investor protection. Recognizing that education and awareness are powerful tools in the fight against investment fraud, NASA is pleased to sponsor Friends Talk Money. Here are 3 important tips to help you protect your money from fraud. With investing, there are always risks, so be cautious of anybody telling you that a certain investment is guaranteed. You should also proceed with caution if somebody is promising very large investment returns. This is a common red flag for investment fraud. Last and most importantly, be sure you're working with a licensed or registered financial professional. You can check your advisor and make sure they're licensed by visiting brokercheck.finra.org. NASA is your partner in keeping you safe and helping you avoid investment frauds. Visit nasa.org and click on the Investor Education tab to learn more.